Let's just watch this video because apparently I'm not the only person. And I think I'm in the majority. Most people feel like, yeah, tipping is a little out of hand right now.
It's like in your face, kind of, oh, hey, how much are you going to tip?
In our 2024 service economy,
18%, 20%, 25, 30%.
We've reached a tipping point. Discretionary kindness or relentless obligation.
One quick little tidbit that I'm going to put in there. It's funny that before, like a good tip was be around 18%, right? If you say tip 15% was like good, 18% was expected to be like, oh, that's really good. You did a good job. Now some kiosk or whatever, they'll start off at 15 or 18%. It's like, it's nuts. So what used to be a good tip, it gets a little out of hand. I think it's just the way it's being offered is also it's throwing people off.
Craziest place I was ever asked for a tip, I would say, was a gas station.
If you're thinking practically everybody has their hand out these days, you've got company. A recent poll says 72% of people say tipping is expected in more places than just 5 years ago. Dry clean.
100%. So I'm definitely in the majority on this. Dry cleaners now. Everybody is asking for tips.
Cleaners, hardware stores, the electrician. We're losing the natural feelings we tap when we tip. Brain scans prove it.
And that moment of good feeling, is that reflected in any particular color?
In the red, and that's where you're starting to get this feeling of warmth and community and this feeling that I've done something good.
Neurologist Paul Wright told us, with tipping, the brain releases feel-good neurotransmitters like dopamine and oxytocin.
Oh my God! Wow!
Tipping is very similar to when you're doing a good deed.
Are we doing it for them or are we doing it for ourselves?
That's a very good question because, quite frankly, many people actually do it for themselves and not just for the recipient.
But in a recent survey, 2/3 of Americans now have a negative view of tipping. There's all that pressure. The guilt trip tip.
I just want to say, it's a nice house for a $5 tip.
You're welcome.
That was rude. The total cost of her order of breadsticks and a medium pizza, $22.78. So the $5 she gave the DoorDash delivery guy comes out to a 22% tip.
So instead of you giving a tip, feeling like you did something because someone did something good, now you're giving a tip because you feel forced, because this is like, it's not a good feeling when you're feeling forced to do anything. And now tipping has become that, like you're being forced to tip because you put in a situation, somebody's looking at you, you got this little tablet at you, the person knows what the tablet has, so, and they know if you do certain things, you're not tipping or you're not, so it's just, and if you tip, they know right away. So it's just, and if you don't tip, they know right away also. So it's like, it's very awkward situation.
Do I feel more obligated to tip when someone is looking at me with their big doe eyes? Probably.
Others tip to right a wrong.
And that's the thing. Honestly, you shouldn't feel obligated to tip if somebody's there, but you do. Just as a human being, if somebody's looking at you, it feels like you're getting put on a spot. And now you're getting put on a spot for tipping, which is just not only you being asked for tips more often in places that you would never, ever, ever have been asked for tips. Now it's also being asked so easily in a sense that it puts the customer in a weird situation. It's almost like I know people that don't go to certain places because they know that place is set up in a way that they would have to tip, and they're like, I don't want to tip there, but if I don't tip, I feel awkward because the way it's set up. And I had this conversation. It's funny, but these conversations I don't think you would ever had like 5 years ago. It's just crazy.
Wage inequality.
People should be paid a living wage. People shouldn't have to be dependent on the tipping system.
Cut calamari.
In Poughkeepsie, New York, restaurateur Russell Beck tried that.
You should pay your people what they're worth.
His No Tipping Please wine bar paid employees up to $30 an hour.
As somebody that works in restaurants a large portion of their career and owned a restaurant, I'm curious to find out how this worked out. Don't worry, I know the answer already, but I'm just curious. And again, let's go back. Let's follow up with this one.
But in wine, there is hard truth.
Our accountant came to us and they said, listen, you're either closing or you're changing your pay model. There's really no in between.
Was it naive to think it could work?
I think it was.
Now with tips, both the bar and its employees
And again, I wouldn't call it naive. Yes, it is naive to a point, but the guy wanted to do something good. He thought it was a good thing. I thought about it. Don't get me wrong. I think most restaurants, I worked in many other restaurants, that they wanted to do this. It's one of those things that this business, there's a couple factors that kind of make it very difficult for restaurants to be able to do this, not have tips. First of all, the margins are so small that if you don't have tips, you would have to increase the prices on so many things that you end up losing customers. So that's already that's one thing that you don't want. You don't want to lose customers, right? People are not going to pay a certain amount for certain things. They just not, especially food. People have a funny way about how much they would pay for food for the most part, most people. So when you increase these prices on food, they have too many options to go to another restaurant for similar food or similar cuisine for a much cheaper price. The funny thing is that most of the people are still paying the same, but they're paying it as a tip. So basically they're paying the wage just directly to the server. The other way, they paid it to the restaurant and the restaurant is giving it to the server. Either way, it comes from the customer. Like any single product that you buy or consume, it comes, the profit gets, passed over to wages, and it comes from consumers. I don't think people, I don't want to call people, but that's either way you're paying for it. One way you have a little bit more control about how much this person's making, and to be fair, they make more money on tips than if a restaurant just gives them a flat rate. I'm just being very truthful. Most servers that are good, and I've said this before, that are good and been doing this for a while, they don't want an hourly wage. They want their tips. They work for their tips, and they like it. Like, they like it that way because they know they do good service. Don't get me wrong, they have the days that they get upset if they feel like they did good service and they don't get a proper tip. Overall, they're winning, and their motivation might be the money. They care, and sometimes is a little bit of both. They care about their job, and they care about, hey, I know I'm doing my job correct, and I want to make sure I get that tip because I'm working my job the way it's supposed to be done. The other way, you don't have control over that. If you get bad service, that person is still getting that rate, that wage.
Have made more money. Beck personally tips big, but he also draws the line.
I ordered something online and I was asked.
And the reporter said, now that they cut that whole thing about no tips and changing, I guess, the hourly rate, the people make more money with tips, and that's how it is. It is what it is. This is a fact. When people that are not in the restaurant business, or in the hospitality business, and they are going out there talking about livable wages, and most of them don't know. And if some of them say, well, I worked in a restaurant when you worked for a little bit of time, you still were probably pretty bad, so you probably didn't get good tips, and now you're over here doing something else that had nothing to do with it, and now you're advocating for these, livable wages on restaurants when you don't know that they're making better wages on tips. If you take the tips away, they're making less. It's just what it is.
If I wanted to tip the people that would be packaging the box, and I was like, excuse me? Yeah.
So seriously, when you go out to eat or you go out to any type of business and they offer you for tips, or you know what, leave some comments below about some of your crazy tipping experience or places that you would never expect to be tipped and they're asking for a tip. And also subscribe if you haven't. All right, subscribe, it won't hurt you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Peace.